make it perfect. One of my all-time favorite bumper stickers, I saw it on the back of a car speeding down a street. It said, "Where am I? Where's my car?" I loved the absurdity of it. I just, yeah. One of my other favorite bumper stickers says, "Where are we going? Why are we in this handbasket?" There I am. I like that because, yeah, it feels like sometimes we're just in this handbasket, and it would seem like everything is falling apart, and every time there's a change, it's for the worse, and every time there's a tweet, it's just more alarming. And especially on social media, it could just sing like, "We are facing end times." Just even for those of us who are Universalists, it can seem like this handbasket is heading someplace very warm, kind of. But what if everything is not falling apart? What if this is actually just business as usual? And it's really up to me to reframe my response. It's very common. I've seen it in a lot of different places, especially in religious circles, people expressing a desire to heal our broken world. The sentiment, it's often couched as part of like a mission statement, kind of like what the Salvation Army has for their mission. The Salvation Army, a growing, loving community of people dynamically living God's mission in a broken world. That language is really popular amongst a lot of justice-seeking Christians and others. You can find it in mission statements for all kinds of groups, with people who are really working to try and improve the lives of the poor and the oppressed. If you were to like throw all of their mission statements together and sort of sift out the biggest ones, you'd wind up with something that says something like, "Together we share a quest for justice, peace, reconciliation, and healing in a broken world." Okay, honestly, they've lifted the term from a Judaic concept of tikkun olam, which translates to world repair. But a lot of times when they borrow it, they take some liberties with the actual translation and the theology of it. So the upshot is that there are some people who see our world is broken. And these are good and loving people, and they want to make things better. But something about it just sticks in my craw. Something about the language makes me itchy. I'm getting itchy. I'm getting irked. I don't have a problem with the people who are motivated by their understanding of what is good and holy, and that they want to take this out to do good work. I deeply respect people of any faith tradition who are called to reach across borders and address injustice. I respect that. So why am I getting all itchy over some language? Our broken world. What's wrong? What's wrong with recognizing that there are some really messed up parts of this world, and that we could become a blessing to the world by walking humbly, doing justice? Okay. It's the broken that puts me on edge. Casting our world as broken just irks the snot out of me. Because I start looking at it and I start growling and I start saying something like, "It ain't broke. It was built this way." Built this way. And that includes the natural world and our human society. In the natural world, rock slides, typhoons, they're part of the entire system of nature, right? Yeah, they cause incredible disruption in human activities, death, illness, but they're part of how the whole system works. Parts of mountainsides cleaving off and crashing into the ocean. It's not broken. It's complex. It's not broken. Well, wait a second, you might say. Now look here. Scientists are in agreement. Like 95. What's with that 5% of scientists? Yeah. But scientists are pretty much in agreement that global climate change is directly caused by human activity. All right. Wouldn't that show that we've broken our world? Yes and no. Yes, our activities have changed the system, but it's not broken. It's just different. It's not very comfortable for us or the other species, but it's still a full system. There's no missing pieces here. There's nothing been removed. Just all of the interlinking parts are now responding to the extraction and combustion of fossil fuels. The natural world is not broken. It's working quite well. And with or without us, it will continue to follow its deep, old laws. So, if anything, it's not that we need to fix nature, but we do need to get things back in balance by fixing us. If we and the bears and the bees and the beavers are all going to have a comfortable place to live. Okay, so that's nature. What about human society? I mean, there's a lot messed up in human society. What do I mean? It's not broken. It was built that way. Okay. Well, as I understand it, as I see it, our brains are hardwired for xenophobia. It came in handy back when, I don't know, a long time ago, but as a species, we're inherently mistrustful of people outside of our immediate clan. We're just built that way. We can overcome it, though. All right? And that's most of what civilization is all about. Overcoming that hardwiring that keeps us just in our separate tribes. But when that xenophobia, when that fear of others, that othering, when it becomes institutionalized and becomes rationalized, it moves from just being a rationalized residual part of our lizard brain to becoming something like institutional racism that prevents all of us from accessing the richness of life. Because in a system with institutionalized racism, both the oppressor and the oppressed are limited in how they can experience. Our laws, our financial practices have been built to hold entire groups of people as othered and to hold them away from resources like good education, meaningful employment, medical care. You can see this when you notice, you have to ask, why did so many people of color wind up in foreclosure during the Great Recession? I mean, I know a lot of people lost their homes, but an overwhelming majority of those people were people of color, people who had worked for years to build up equity in their homes and lost it because of a whole complex system of practices, all legal, that kept people hemmed into certain neighborhoods and then made a whole lot of money off of them through predatory lending. It wasn't as if anybody had said, how can we engineer a system that perfectly oppresses people that we're uncomfortable with? But that's pretty much how it happened. That's what happens when we don't examine prejudice or even the way that our own brains work. Nothing was broken. The system worked quite well. Like our immigration system. It's not broken. It was built that way. Some systems work better when they are not fully examined. And that's how evil moves about in this world, buried so deep into our normal that we don't even notice it until the person next to us cries out. Many of the worst parts of our human society are not broken, they're just unexamined prejudice. And any fixing to be done is the hard human work of unpacking the unexamined, naming it, and trying to do it better over and over again until there's less unexamined stuff to trip us up. Okay. Deep breath. So that's what I mean when I say it ain't broken. Now, here's another reason why the phrase broken world just irks the snot out of me. It implies that there is a more perfect, more preferred state that has been broken. It presumes that there is a norm that is better than any variation, which is okay, as long as you fit in that norm. The real reason why I take issue, why I get itchy with the idea of broken world, is that it's based upon an underlying theology that I find problematic. That theology, the one where our world is broken, it comes from an interpretation of the Judeo-Christian creation story. You might know this one. In the beginning, there was perfection. Except, actually, if you read Genesis, there's two beginnings. In the beginning, there was perfection in a garden. And eventually, two humans who were somehow too human, not perfect, despite having been made in God's image. Do you sense a setup here? Two humans transgressed one rule. Really, this is a setup. Eat everything and anything except for that one thing. And perfection was broken because humans were not perfectly obedient, because they were too human, despite having made their God in their own image. This break, this rupture, this banishment, this punishment, this is the underpinning of what many Christians interpret as our broken world. Inherent human sinfulness broke God's perfect world and continues to break our perfect world. When you buy into this fully, it assumes, because it's got some assumptions built in, about what perfection would look like. people are trying to fix something they perceive as broken and restore it to what they would consider whole or mended. You always have to ask, does it include people who don't look like, think like, love like you? So the problem with presuming that our world is broken is that it's based upon a theology that casts us as inherently bad children who broke something, and now we're trying to fix it, but of course we can't because there's this omnipotent God who's really in charge, but seems to be waiting for us to live up to or down to his expectations. Can you see why I get itchy here? So here's where a different kind of theology might change the response. Remember reframing the response? Try a different theology on. Maybe, which is better, A or B? A or B? What if, instead of a single omnipotent, omniscient, judging sky God, what if there was a theology that accepted that perfection includes things that appear imperfect? Things that are outside of the norm, things that mean the norm has to be wider. We've all seen leaves that simply just grew asymmetrically. We've all seen trees that were misshapen from terrain or weather, and yet they still grow. They photosynthesize. They add beauty. We've all seen imperfection and loved it more dearly because of its uniqueness. Think of a beloved. Is it their perfection, their adherence to a norm that you love? Or is it their crooked smile? The way the left eye crinkles a little more than the right eye when they grin and laugh. What happens when our understanding of perfection includes some of those things that appear broken or imperfect? What if our understanding of the divine included our having to help create and recreate this perfect imperfection? Rather than always failing at restoring Eden, what if we are tasked with joining in as a part of nature to create and participate in the wild diversity that nature insists upon? At that point, our work is less about fixing and more about participating. Last one in. Okay. Yes. I recognize that brokenness is real. Yes. There really is some brokenness in our world. I see that. Things like relationships, covenants can be broken. And people can be broken. You've known people who are broken. Perhaps you've spent some time feeling broken. Most families have someone who isn't quite okay. Maybe it was a trauma. Maybe it was just a long, slow wounding from oppression. But there's someone in the family who wound up broken. And that old judging sky god doesn't seem very interested in helping. How we respond to our broken people is how I will measure our gods. Here's an example. Cousin Guido. Yes, we have a cousin Guido in my family. I have a very large family with many branches, and on one branch of my extended family, one of our broken ones was cousin Guido. He wasn't my cousin exactly. He was my step-grandfather's second cousin. But in an Italian-American family, for better or worse, everyone is family. When I was a little kid, I really couldn't tell how old Guido was, because he seemed like a young man right up until the moment he became an old man. And that was because when he was a very young man, he was sent over to fight in World War II. He was just a poor Italian-American kid. Maybe he wasn't quite neurotypical. But he had no one to speak up for him. No one took a look at him and said, "We're going to put you in the kitchen." So, like too many other poor young men, he was issued a pair of boots and a gun and sent off to fight. And when the bombs started exploding around him and the guns began firing, his mind snapped. It was all over. It was what used to be called shell-shocked. He got stuck in the middle of that terror, and he stayed there for the rest of his life. Guido's father finally tracked him down, found him in a hospital. Back then, there was really no kind of treatment for that kind of trauma. So his father did what an Italian father would do. He just brought his son home and set to caring for him for the rest of his life. Guido's father went and married a much, much younger woman with the understanding that when he died, she would continue caring for Guido. And Arcangela did. And the rest of the family cared for him too. My step-grandparents always included Guido in the big family dinners, took him places. They'd include him exactly as he was, not just leaving him in the back room, not just waiting for him to get better, not expecting him to change at all, just including him and loving him as the rocking, moaning, terrified person he was. Have you ever seen that kind of love? The love that keeps loving someone even in their brokenness. It fills the cracks with gold. What makes it astonishing is that it means finding the holy in the spaces where some would say God seems to have deserted. If we're going to love and live into brokenness, it's going to take a different kind of theology. It's going to take us a theology that asks us to live into what is, not in guilt, not as punishment, but in a steady renewal over and over of what family and love and connectedness can look like. It took the rest of Guido's life. And I can say he did come to a place of tranquility and kindness in his later years. And all along the way, he knew that he belonged. It became the work of a family to hold his brokenness, his fragility. And it showed us, the younger members, that in this family we didn't have to be perfect to be loved. We simply had to be present. This is the work of creative people. who take what is imperfect and simply add to it with their love, not to fix it, but to simply keep creating alongside their God. And such is a God that I will measure us by. May it be so, and blessed be.